Just spilled water on my shirt. Realized
Like
I
it
had
goes to take a drink, slobbers everywhere.
it right before the podcast, which we've been talking about for weeks. It's drying up though, not a big deal. I also noticed I had like adhesive, marine adhesive that I was using on my roof yesterday to like patch something up there too. I'm like, this is a bit of a clunky start, but whatever.
You're like, is this a video podcast?
Yeah,
Oh shit.
yeah, exactly. Oh damn, should have put some more effort in to our appearance, maybe shaved.
Well, I don't know if you can tell. I brushed my beard this morning. Like I
I
was
did
like,
actually. Yeah, it's looking very, very puffy. It was very, very floofy. I like it. Yeah, very
yeah, you gotta bring the A game.
has good shape. It's a big deal. We've been excited about this for a while.
It's been years in the making.
Yeah, I'd love to start this by just talking about why we're doing this for anybody who's listening. I remember you and I first talked about this like when we were up in Squamish and we were going for a swim and we were like, we should be recording this, this conversation. And then here we are a year and a half later, we're finally doing it. So yeah, why are we doing this?
I mean, I'm doing it for fame and ego. Mostly.
Yeah.
Cool. Everyone cool I know has a podcast, so I'm like, we should.
Yeah, we're just 7 years late.
We're just 7.5 years behind the trend, but no big deal. My objective with this podcast is I have the thought, whether it's you or with other colleagues, friends, whatever, where I'm like, this is a conversation that should be had. Like, guys should be having this conversation. Entrepreneurs, dads, bros, young, the 20-year-old me should have heard this, that kind of conversation. So to me, this is just a place that we can do that.
I guess I'm doing this because, the kinds of conversations that you and I have seem to be the kinds of conversations that guys want to access in men's group. We have thousands of guys inside men's group. We have millions of guys come to the website, and they all just want to talk about the same kinds of things that you and I are talking about. I'm also keen to be an example for men because I just see dudes just not having these conversations and being afraid to, and it's only benefited me talking about the real stuff, So, yeah.
I would add to that, Sean, one of the lessons I've learned in the last 5 years, but decade, has been how important it is to talk. Like, not talk in the like, woe is me venting way, but like to just talk as a processing mechanism for real shit that's going on. And the most valuable places I've done that have been like in the entrepreneurial group that we're in together. Like, I don't even know what the fuck we're going to talk about going into those meetings. There's not a single one I leave not being like, that was dope.
Same.
It's been in, being in Al-Anon or AA or Nar-Anon and stuff like that. Like that sort of context of conversations, men's groups, etc. Like, they get to hang out with other peers and just talk about things. And that's when the best brainwaves happen, always.
I saw a clip on Jordan Peterson recently where he talked about how important it is to talk through things with other people and why. Because you're actually like sorting through thoughts. You're like, okay, this idea of what I could do, no, I'm going to put that over there in the no box. Okay, this is a maybe. Okay, it's actually like moving stuff around in your brain. And a lot of guys think that like talking about stuff is masturbatory or like a sign of weakness. But for me, it's just like helping figure out what action I'm going to take next.
I love talking about masturbation. So
the
masturbatory part of the talk for myself, like my experience has been when you get stuck in the logical mind and you're doing mental masturbation because you're just like cycling through things and you're kind of like, you're just talking to yourself is the point. Hence the conversation with other people, so that, because you have to test against something external from you.
Yeah.
Like, I need to be like, hey, what do you think about this? And you're like, I think that's bullshit. I don't have to agree with you. I can be like, fuck you, I'm right. But that lets me decide that. And if I say it to myself, I'm just like, you're in your own little echo chamber. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Even if it is a fuck you, this guy's not making sense, it kind of helps validate what you feel. I also really want to be an example of like talking about real stuff, but in a non-floofy way, spiritual warrior bro dancing in the woods naked kind of men's groupy kind of way, just I want to show normal dudes what it's like to talk about this stuff.
I love that and feel like I was lucky enough to have a dad who, whether advertently or inadvertently, didn't exactly demonstrate what we're talking about, but wasn't like a closed misogynist person in that way. So I certainly have calibrated in that direction.
I mean, you and I both grew up playing hockey. I think that's important to share because that's where we get the bro thing from. Like I walk into a mechanic shop, I feel at home. Like those guys are the guys I grew up playing hockey with. I can do the bro thing. I loved hitting things. I loved fighting. So did you. You played a very high level of hockey, a little bit higher than me. And I think you shared that. So you have that masculine side, don't you? We both seem to have that. But then we were both gravitating towards these more like impact driven and also a bit more sensitive markets. Like you've gone hard into yoga and I've gone hard into like creating safe spaces for dudes to talk about things. So I've always thought that was really interesting about us and part of the reason why men seem to be drawn to listening to you and I.
Yeah, fair. I think the spiritual, soft, emotionally anchored side of the conversation is something neither of us shy away from. But to your point, keeping it in balance with like, I've always struggled when that goes too far into the floofy side of things. It's like, we should have those conversations and we should look at life that way. And there should be, you know, more connection there. And it should be anchored in the reality of being a dude, you know, that real connective, down to earth conversation about the real, what the fuck's happening as a dude in life. I think you should be able to talk about it more on the regular. And that's the part that I see societally not happening. Like the conversation stays superficial between men too much, too often.
Yeah.
You know, you can learn and vicariously experience through connect. Like I learned through talking to you about your experience and what you see and like, you know, the things that you're talking about as your own values. That's helpful for me to clarify in my own mind, you know, who I am and what I think as well. Mm-hmm. So I think that the friendship and the conversation and the groups is like, I don't know, endlessly valuable. Not talked about enough by men.
That's what I like about talking with you. You live in the yoga world, but you're not like, you know, bowing before our meetings or doing cacao ceremonies with me when this starts or, you know, any wacky stuff like that. You can just get right in the real conversation. But also, you can make dick jokes or fart jokes. And I hope it's an example for guys. I really do, of what these friendships can look like.
Yeah. Well, and I think most men are more complex, in a positive way, I mean, than they'd let on. Like, there's more going on in here. All this stuff, this is human stuff, you know. So
you know, I see it. I mentioned it before, but like we've had 300-pound gang members, like with all the tattoos and the skinhead, and like they want to talk about it. You know, we've had just high-powered, hotshot investment bankers, lawyers, doctors, celebrities, dudes that work at Walmart or like construction workers, like passive teachers. Like they all want to talk about it, and if you get them in the right environment where they feel like they're not going to be judged, they will benefit from it. They always benefit from it, more than they probably acknowledge. Like those, what they talked about there, some of the sentences they heard, some of the perspectives will then shift how they like interact with their world for like weeks, months, years down the road. Could you give the overview of your story?
Yeah, the quick macro. I grew up in Western Canada. I grew up in little small towns. Like the town I spent the most time was like 3,000 people. So there was only 3 things to do in that town. You could play hockey, you could chase girls, you could do drugs, you know, drink beer. So I stayed away from the drugs mostly, but I did the rest of them. But then, you know, fast forward some years later, I kind of bounced around trying to find what I was into. I went into marine biology for a while and like became a professional scuba diver and lived in South America for a couple of years. And then I ended up, you know, getting into the yoga thing or getting back into the yoga thing with my wife. We helped open some studios with friends, opened our own big studio. And that was awesome. And that was like the thing that really pushed my entrepreneurial journey forward. So sort of started identifying myself as an entrepreneur. Then we had a tragedy. We lost our daughter 4 days before her second birthday. That was fucking crazy. And not because of that, but that reprioritized some of our life decisions. You know, so after that, we ended up selling our business, selling our house, sold everything, moved into an Earth Roamer, like a 4x4 RV. And I always make the joke, like we did the van life thing before it was cool. People were like,
yeah, you
what?
were.
Like,
yeah.
What the fuck
what
is
this guy doing with his family?
What a dumbass. Yeah.
What a drifter.
So, yeah, fucking vagabond. So, but you know, we drove around for 2 years full time, and spent about another half a year living in it more at a trailer park. Did all of Canada, United States, Mexico, dipped into Guatemala and Honduras, came back up, came back down.
You're working
And then got
online the whole
bored.
time, right? You're working online the whole
Yeah,
time? Yeah.
sort of transitioned to working online during that. So like also was like building this. I was like homeschooling my son, taking care of an infant daughter because we left when she was like 2 weeks old.
Wow.
You know, my wife and I still doing our thing, traveling, and then trying to build an online business because we're like, well, how do we keep paying for gas or diesel? So, yeah, went through a lot and then got bored of the travel part of it and ended up staying in Mexico, or decided that we wanted to stay in Mexico and stay to Mexico. We've been here for 7 years now, almost 8. Built a house in the last year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago.
Nice. Beautiful house.
Yeah, it's pretty dope. And I've built up a pretty big coaching business. You know, my wife's struggled with addiction in her life. I've gone through, you know, being in very active, fucking insane addiction. I've got a third kid now as well. So we've got 3 kids, all 5 years apart. Like we just decided, hey, let's just do all the parenting levels at the same fucking time. Like
Totally. You manage it so well though, dude. Like I was with some friends this weekend and it's like they've got 1 kid and it's like chaos for them, and you have 3 and you still live your life, and I'm like, that's that's awesome. Yeah. It's one of the things I appreciate.
Yeah, well, I'm glad it looks like that.
Yeah.
You know, there's some funny parent comments out there. For any other parents listening to this, you'll get what I'm saying. Like before you have a kid, or as soon as you have 1 kid, then you look at someone who's like pregnant and has no kids. You're like, oh, you don't know what you're in for. Like they're saying shit, and you're like, yeah, right. You know what you're talking about. And then when you have 2 kids, you're like, you're 1 kid people. Like you're such douchebags. You don't know what's going on. And then people say things. People are like, oh, you don't even know what it's like if you have 3 kids. And it used to piss me off. And then as soon as I had a 3rd kid, I'm like, I look at people with 2 kids now and I'm like, pussies. Like,
Yeah,
you have no idea.
You're outnumbered. You're outnumbered, bro.
So I can only imagine for people we know that have even more kids than that. But anyways, yeah, there's some.
How long you been with your wife?
Jenna and I met when I had just turned 14 years old.
Nice.
And we were pen pals. It was like pre-internet days. So we kind of off and on for years, and then we got married 15 years ago this year. Both of us had said we don't even think we were going to get married, and then we got invited on a family trip to Vegas, and while we were there, we're like, it'd be funny if we got married. And we were sober, you know, like it wasn't like a weird, oops, we got married thing. We made the decision. And much to the dismay of everyone, we just got married. The rest is history. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So as much as I love talking about myself all day, Sean,
We both do.
tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, grew up in Western Canada as well. Different province than Josh, but same kind of idea. Not a 3,000 person town, but a relatively small town. Grew up just playing hockey. That's all I did. And wanted to be a pro hockey player, didn't make it. But just loved the game. Loved being in the dressing room with the guys. I was always a captain or an assistant captain, not because I was particularly skilled, but just because I was supportive of the other guys. I knew how to pull guys aside and have conversations and cheer them on and encourage them. I just loved the little shin stick taps and the little butt pats and, you know, those little things when guys did them to me. I really appreciated it, and I loved doing that with other guys. And I loved after you go to battle with the guys on the ice, you know, the guys just wanted to sit there and talk after. Nobody wanted to leave the dressing room, and that was just a really nice feeling. And that was like 5 days a week for me for like 20 years, you know? So like, I think that really set me on this course towards men's groups, because when my hockey career ended, I really missed that, and I really looked for that in my life. Ended up going to university. Did it for my parents, not because I wanted to. At the same time, I was moonlighting by just being an entrepreneur, and so I was just throwing myself into different ideas and different online businesses because I wanted the freedom to be able to travel. I heard about people working from their laptops all over the world, and that was like the opposite of the conservative approach my parents had to life. So I was like, hell yeah, sign me up for that. Even though it's not really my strengths to be on the computer, I'm more of a people person, similar to yourself probably. I went hard down that route, created a couple of businesses like that, started traveling, Moved to Mexico when I was 25 because I met a woman, fell in love with her. She was from a Latin country, so then we decided to move down to Mexico. Spent a bunch of years down there. Just felt desperately lonely. Ended up starting a Facebook group with just threw a bunch of my friends into it that I met along the way, and a lot of them were entrepreneurs. Because, people find each other. So I had these squirrely online businesses in kind of cool markets. And one of them was I was a DJ for a long time. When I was between 17 and sort of 26, when I moved down to Mexico, I was a professional DJ. That's all I did during college and afterwards once hockey ended. And yeah, so I had this interesting online business, and other entrepreneurs kind of thought that was cool and reaching outside this network. Threw them into a Facebook group. None of the women wanted to chat, but all the guys were like wanting to have personal conversations and go on adventures together. And so we did a surf trip. And just brought all the guys down to my place in Mexico, like 10 dudes, and we all slept on air mattresses. We called it the bullpen. My girlfriend almost broke up with me for it. And but the guys at the end of it, they sat around, and I thought we were going to talk about business stuff, kind of in like a circle or at dinner. And the first guy says, "Guys, my wife's had 3 miscarriages, and I have no idea how to support her."
Fuck.
And the other guys were so supportive of that. And they'd been through, there were 1 or 2 guys who'd been through that, and they were able to help this guy. And I was like, that's cool. And then, some guy asked some bullshit business thing, the next question. But then the next one after that, some guy said, I've got a young son, like a 1-year-old son. I want my brother to be in his life, but he's drunk. He's a drunk, and he's making all these mistakes, and he keeps making a scene. How do I manage this relationship? I want my son to have a relationship with his uncle, but like his uncle's a fuck up, And I just thought that was such a real, beautiful question, and the guys were so supportive of that. And I was like, oh, there's something here. So we kept doing these adventure trips, surf trips, ski trips, supercar racing, sailing, spearfishing, wilderness survival training with Navy SEALs. Just trips I wanted to do with friends, like you and I have been talking about doing, Josh, or like we've done. Just hanging out doing adventures together. And then the guys were like, you should make this a thing. We'll pay for this if you want to keep doing it. And that was my first men's group. So I came by the whole men's group thing fairly honestly. I never sought it out. I wanted to be a hockey player and a surfer and a DJ. Like I was drawn to more surface fun things. But it seems like my natural skills of being a supporter, some of the adversities I've faced, and then some kind of natural leader's abilities as a leader that men want to follow, like led to just this men's group thing happening on its own. Yeah.
I love how organically it sort of came together. I don't know if you've ever painted that entire picture for me. Talk a little bit about some of the adversities you faced, because I think my experience of you, Sean, is because, not necessarily only because of your adversities, it's a personality trait too, but you're able to hold space in a special way, And that's where that trust, and I can see why organically something like this would come up for you.
Thanks, dude.
Because of that.
Thanks, dude. Yeah. First of all, grew up in a household with a very loving family. We didn't have a lot of money, but, we made sure we had what we wanted. But it was an alcoholic family system, and people in my close immediate family had struggles with that, and as a result, weren't super emotionally available, or pretty hard on people around them. And that had a great impact on me. It made me very insecure growing up as a young man. That insecurity led me to chase a lot of stuff that caused more pain in difficult situations. For example, I charged into DJing because I thought it'd be a way I could be cool and I could meet women, because I didn't understand how to do that. And DJing was great for me. It was all about networking and just getting to know people and bringing people together and throwing club nights, and it went really well. But it was also like not who I was. Like I didn't want to be hanging out in nightclubs five nights a week till 5 a.m. But I just thought I had to do something like that to be lovable. I had to be up in front of people, like doing something special, when in reality I should have just probably been playing hockey with my friends and maybe surfing or something that I grew up doing. And also it really burned me when I started dating, because I was so insecure, and that led me to choosing the wrong women. And because I was really insecure, I attracted women that were insecure, and that led to me getting cheated on in 3 or 4 different relationships, which was pretty impactful on me at the time. Just doubled down on my insecurity, My first business went bankrupt, so I charged into an online business with a lot of manic, naive energy, and that business ended up racking up Like I thought you just had to persist no matter what, because those are the sort of the entrepreneurial stories you hear. I was hearing on the TV or whatever, you know,
Yeah.
and I racked up like $500,000 in debt, and they treated me like a criminal. And I, for like years after, like 5, 7 years after, like I'd be out with on a date with a girl, and I get insufficient funds, like trying to take money out for a movie ticket or something, or like, you know, I go for on a trip, I go see a friend, and like I didn't have money for a hotel, and I have to beg somebody to stay on the couch, and there's always humiliating little series of events afterwards. So that financial stress, the stress of being cheated on, um, also the stress of moving down to a third world country where I don't know anybody, and half the year there's nobody that speaks my language. The isolation of that really took a toll. All those things kind of piled up, and there was not much emotional and social intelligence in my home growing up, so I didn't know how to deal with that as a man. And what ended up happening is I got sick. I got chronically ill. The stress built up so much that one day I was on a ski trip at high altitude with a bunch of dudes doing the men's group thing, living the dream, just flying around, going to these different adventures with dudes. Like that was my work at the time. And I all of a sudden I couldn't get out of bed. And 7 years later, now I built back my health. But at its worst, at 33, I had to move back in with my parents, live in their basement because I couldn't cook for myself. I couldn't walk around the block. So definitely some health adversity there, and and that made me really face like who I was and ask those tough questions, because I put a lot of my worth into the girls, how pretty the girls were that I was with, or like how cool the business is that I was doing, or like how many friends I had and how those friends were all over the world. And then all of a sudden I couldn't engage with any of that, and it's like without that stuff, who is Sean, you know?
Yeah.
So that was the darkest time I'll probably ever have to go through, hopefully. Especially the first 2 or 3 years of it, not having clear answers on what was going wrong with me, and not knowing if I'd get better and if I could ever do the things I like again, or have friends again, or have a partner or work. I lost my business. A lot of friends disappeared. You know, it was really, really humbling, and so that was really defining. And then that set me on a course to making changes, and like honestly just making more conservative decisions in my life. So I was like, okay, this men's group thing is real. I can't fly around all the time and do this. It seems like guys have a real need for this. Why don't I do it online? Seems like that's the bigger need. Lots of guys out there can't justify leaving their families for 4 days, or the financial costs. Why don't we just start doing this over Zoom? So then I started mensgroup.com, and that blew up big time right from the first moment. Like I remember I thought it'd be a success if I had one group with 10 guys in it. I think I even asked you.
Yeah.
And like within the first month, we had like 100 guys, and I was like, holy shit, what am I going to do with this? You know? And yeah, and then with dating, I really changed my approach too. Like instead of getting all victim-y and red pill and blaming women, like I really took the time to take responsibility for like my role in those bad relationships and me getting burned, you know? And so then I was able to apply those lessons. That's the benefit of like taking responsibility. I think I was able to apply those lessons to my dating, and I started saying no to women that weren't good for me. And that eventually led me to Katie, who's now my fiance. We're engaged. We've been together for 5.5 years, and that's just flowing really well. And yeah, we're planning a wedding now, and just the easiest, flowiest relationship, most positive, supportive relationship I've ever been through. One other note along the way, I had hockey buddies actually that had been to therapy because they'd been through some tragedies, and so I started therapy like in my late 20s, and that was really helpful for learning along the way as well. Yeah. Just being able to sort through things and understand that like this is normal stuff, and you know how other guys handle this. And so I've definitely been studying psychology, and that's all most of those books you see are like on those topics, you know, like psychology, mindset, well-being, men's issues, and yeah, which brings me to Men's Group today, you know, where now we're getting millions of guys to the website, and we have tons of members all connecting over hundreds of meetings a month. And now I live in a little surf town with also similar to you, like basically my dream house kind of overlooking the ocean, and yeah, pretty simple, quiet, but fulfilling life.
I love it.
Bit of a ramble. Hopefully it wasn't too much.
No, dude. I think it's always so interesting to hear a bigger, full Reader's Digest version of anyone's story.
Yeah.
Like mostly because your perspective suddenly changes, and I find myself guilty of this as much as anyone, that like if you lack full perspective on someone, then you judge them, not necessarily even, you judge them on what you see or your interactions. And I don't know. I think the whole story for something like it changes your whole perspective of the whole human being who's in front of you, and that's everyone. That's everyone out there walking around. So, anyways, the mutual feeling around co-piloting the podcast is I like having conversations about whatever, anything, any subject matter, any whatever. But like I like the depth of the conversation, and what I find with a lot of people is I can't have any depth of conversation. They don't have anything to say. That's no shade on them. Maybe it's me. Maybe they just don't like me or whatever. I'm just a weirdo. But like you and I never have that problem. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. We'll go both just dive head in. And I think that, you know, one of the things I really respect about you is you have a certain kind of commitment to things that I aspire to have as well. You seem to just have like these moments of clarity, like I'm starting this men's group and I'm going to do it like this and it's going to solve this thing. And then like you literally just manifest it and it's fucking there. So
Thanks, dude.
I don't know. I love that shit. I like that. And I respect it from the perspective of like, you know, the quote that I like is knowledge isn't power. Knowledge put into action is power. Like I see you as an action taker and someone who's legitimately trying to cause positive impact in the world and doing something about it from your own perspective. So, yeah.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate that. And I think we share that. We share a lot of that stuff. And that's why I think.
And I don't know, I have to add this. I don't know anyone who has had a wider variety of experience and like real world knowledge around men, around society, around men's groups, around brotherhood, around like all of that together. That's, you know, you're an aggregator of those groups and therefore have had all that experience. So it's always super fun to talk to you because your perspective on these things I find like really thought provoking and powerful. So.
Oh, thanks, dude. That's really nice to hear. Yeah, definitely been hanging out with a lot of dudes. How did we meet?
I have no fucking clue anymore. Oh, no, I do remember. My wife's friend was dating you. And
yes, that's true.
we were traveling in our Earth Roamer, and we went to visit you in La Ventana.
In Mexico, yeah.
Yeah, and in Mexico. And I don't know, it was the first day or the second day. You're like, hey, do you kite? And I'm like, no. And you're like, cool, let me just show you this trick real quick. And then Sean fucking rips by in a kite. Your feet weren't even strapped into the board, and you're like kick flipping and shit like that. And I was like,
yeah, that's right.
Man love immediately.
Yeah, and I remember it's true. And I remember she was like, "Oh, I got this guy, you know, and he's from this other part of the country, and I think you guys will get along." Usually, that doesn't go very well because
usually not.
She didn't really say that you're an entrepreneur. Like she didn't express the commonalities that she thought we had in common, and so I was like, "Who is this guy?" And then you rolled up in this massive 4x4 off-road like camper vehicle, and I was like, and then we started talking business, and we've been in a business networking group ever since then. We've been into a men's group together at times, and we've been friends ever since. So surfing, biking, doing those kinds of things, but also more so just checking in about life and stuff with each other. Hey,
yeah. I think
and business. Seems like we're always in similar places in both those things.
Yeah, we seem to run in parallel by accident. Even when we're like out of touch for a minute, we come back and it's like, I'm working on this. We're like, shit, me too. Like, so
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Run in parallel, struggle in parallel. However you want to talk about it.
Yeah,
exactly. And
totally.
So we're gonna launch. So we're gonna roll into the next episode, which is like gonna be about friendships, because that's something you and I have talked a lot about, and that's something a lot of guys struggle with. In my opinion, it's the reason why so many guys are feeling anxious and depressed, and all those stats are there. But just first, like, where do you think we're gonna go with this podcast, Josh? Like, what's part of the vision? I've got some ideas. I'd love to talk about all sorts of men's issues and stuff that we're facing. Share our own stories. Share some hard truths. Kind of like Jordan Peterson. Like, a lot of people don't like him. They're triggered by him, but that's because he's saying things that are uncomfortable, but they're true a lot of the time. I want to be that. You know, I want to have laughs about this stuff because I feel like it's healthy, even if it's offside. And I think eventually starting to pull in some of the connections you and I have, some people we respect and hear from to have a chat with them. You know, what do you think?
I think thought provocation is a huge element of where this is going to go. You know, it's just about having down to earth conversations, unfiltered, because, you know, especially right now, without going down this tangent, I don't know that people say what's actually in their brain. And not that everything is in your brain should come out your mouth, but sometimes it should too. You know, like where that line is, I don't know. Also, I can't help but think of like the macro name or title for what this. I don't know what it is yet, but like to me that like frames it. One of the ideas we had was testosterone and tantrums, because I feel like we can do both of those things on it.
Totally, pretty well, because I think we're gonna go on some rants.
Yeah, rant warning. That's what we'll have to put. The public service announcement.
Yeah, wisdom
warning.
and ranting. You know, and it's up to you. It's up for you, the listener, to filter through what's what. Yeah, I agree. I think we're going to impact a lot of guys. We have such a large reach with men's group. You have such a large reach through your communities. I feel like this would be great. If anybody listening has any ideas for like where we could take this, what you like about how we talked so far, feel free to leave it in the comments of whatever you're listening or watching to. We'd love the feedback. And next episode we're going to talk about guy friends. We're going to talk about
dude friends,
guy friends.
Bromance.
It's hard. Like you and I, dude. You're like you're masculine. You're charismatic. You're like successful. You live this interesting life. I always find it baffling when I run into guys like you. They're having a similar experience to me, which is like, oh, you know, I don't have that many guys to talk to. I don't have many friends. You know. So I think it's important we talk about that. Why do friends even matter? You know, male friend stats, why men suck at making friends, what makes a good friendship, how to make friends, and more. So we'll see you guys in the next episode.
See you there.